Let's check out how you can program this very bass into your productions with Sanguine Bass. Let's hop into a session. So we are right here in a session where we have Sanguine Bass for our bass. I figured I'd first go over all the features you can find in Sanguine Bass. After that, we will quickly program a little bit of bass, just separate from this project. And then we can compare some of the available tones in Sanguine Bass. However, first, let's check out this mix. So sounding absolutely massive. Now let's go over some of the features. When you first load Sanguine Bass, you will notice the top half here. We have the Solemn Tones logo saying Sanguine Bass and our preset loader. So here we have a couple presets. First of all, we have Clean DI. This is just the raw bass tone. Of course, I am absolutely in love with the raw tones coming from the Aristides bass. This is my personal custom 050, but for metal, we're generally gonna wanna amp it up a little bit. So then we have some mix ready pre-processed tones. This is my Aristides being ran through a variety of amp options and pedals, and all of them have a very different type of character. So maybe one tone is a bit too heavy for maybe a rock song you're working on, while the other might be too gentle for some progressive metalcore you're trying to write. So you really want to try all of them a little bit depending on the context, but each of them is absolutely epic in the right context. Then we have this little piano switch right here. When you turn that on, you actually get a keyboard at the bottom that will show you which notes are currently being played. Then also when certain key switches are used, which is these notes at the bottom here, you can use these to get access to a variety of special sounds that you might not have from just alternative picking. As you can see, you can have finger plucks and slaps and hammer-ons, pull-offs, natural harmonic mutes, scrapes, mutes, all that good stuff. When you want to control these, you can do that with key switches. These notes at the bottom, I will show you later how that works exactly. And then these bits on the piano will light up and tell you which are being activated as well. It's just more of a little visual indicator as well. It's also telling you in what tuning a given note could be playing. For example, if you have a guitar at home and it's tuned to drop A, but you notice you're playing notes here in drop E, maybe you need to rewrite a section you're working on to match it to your guitar. But if you find this maybe too busy, you can just turn it off and the plugin is just as functional without it. Then we have our volume meter right here. Now next you have active key switch. This is just like the key switches at the bottom, just telling you which key switch is currently being used. More on that later. We have octave drop. This matches the bass octave to Guitar Pro's typical MIDI outline. So if you are importing a MIDI from Guitar Pro or Tug's Guitar or anything like that, you may want to turn this on. Otherwise you might be playing notes in a totally different octave and you might think, damn, this bass sounds so low and muddy, when you're actually just in the wrong octave altogether. However, by turning this off, you have a little bit more room for your key switches and so forth. So personally, I like to program with it off. Next, we have the key switches button. This just brings up a list of the various key switches you have access to for if you forget which note was where. And then we have the playing window. So in playing, we are controlling how the bass is being played. For example, if you are programming a bend, which you can do with pitch bend modulation. We have tutorials on this already on the channel. Then you can choose how intense Sanguine Bass responds to the bend you just programmed. Decay intensity has effect on the attack and release of the samples, and tune lets you essentially detune your bass. Maybe all of your guitar tracks were a little sharp, and you don't want to have to retrack them, now you can make your bass just as out of tune as your guitars are. Some people also like to experiment with microtones and so forth, and so this will essentially allow you to just tune the bass to whatever your heart desires. However, if you are not interested in those super experimental things, I would suggest just leaving this button right here, because it is very easy to just tune your bass wrong and then end up having undesired results. Next, we have slide speed. This changes how quickly a note slides from one to the next when you're using the sliding mode key switches. And then we have the human error menu. This adds little noises to your performance to make it sound more realistic. So you turn this off. Now none of these do anything. You turn it on, and now you can choose which noises are being turned up. Next, we have the force slap feature. So when this is turned on, all of your notes are replaced with slap articulations, and then these different modes next to it allow you to control which slap articulations are being used when. Of course, it is just a little bit more experimental. If you're trying to make a industry standard bass line for a metal song, usually you want this force slap to be off. And then finally, we also have auto slide. This means whenever two notes are overlapping, they will automatically slide from one to the next. Clicking back, we go back to the main menu and we go into tone. So right here we have our output if we want to control how loud the bass is. We have our EQ settings if you want to kind of change the default tones that are already shipped with the plugin. Perhaps you're absolutely in love with the Sanguine Glass preset, but for your particular mix you need a little less highest of high end, so you get rid of the air. Maybe you need a little more regular high end, so you boost it right here. Next, we have the enforce feature, which will allow you to get rid of the sub frequencies of the bass and replace them with a sine wave, a square-ish wave, or a triangle-ish wave. I say ish because a pure square wave or a pure triangle wave would not sound very pleasing, but you will notice when you turn this on, you will have very different low-end characteristics. Enforce volume allows you to control how loud these waves will be exactly, and then devour attack is actually my current favorite feature. This allows you to reduce the attack on the bass. You will notice that Sanguine bass has some very defined attack, and I absolutely love this when I want my bass hitting hard in a heavy metal context. But if I want my bass to be soloed, maybe at one point it's just the bass on its own and it's playing maybe a more intricate part, you might notice, damn, I want this attack to be a little less in the face. Then you can turn up devour attack and make the performance a little more gentle. Pun not intended. So for me, if I want my bass to be the most realistic possible, I will put it somewhere here. But if I want my bass to just hit hard and be the foundation of the mix, I'll put it right here. Then we have artificial attack. This will boost the attack artificially. Then finally, we have tame highs. Whenever I have a higher bass note being played, it will push down those highs so the bass does not peak through the mix as much. So those are the features. Let's now dive into the actual programming right here. So as you can see, we have our regular bass line. These notes are what the bass is actually playing. The notes underneath are the key switches that will control how these notes are played. Now, if I were to delete all of these key switches, the bass on top would still be a functional, good sounding bass. It would just sound a little less interesting when soloed. But in a heavy metal mix, usually you won't even hear the difference, except for perhaps this slide at the beginning. Let me solo it right here. You can hear how those ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta is very interesting because we're using a variety of slap articulations and so forth. However, in the context of the mix, they kind of just vanish. Now, let's program a little bit of bass on the side here. So let's play something in, let's say, drop A, and let's maybe work with a clean DI at first. So we write a note. Let's go A, and then D, B, C. All right, we just have a simple progression. We just wrote this, and it plays like this. And as you can hear at the end here, you have this sound, which is the automatic mutes happening from the human error. So this noise you will hear when the silence happens is the mute noise from human error. Let's check that out again. which is something your left hand would do right after playing. Now, this is currently alternative picking, as you can see right here, active key switch alt picking. This is the default. But what if we wanted to change how this is played? We would go into our key switches and let's see, maybe we want some mutes. So let's put in the D sharp -1 key switch. So D sharp -1 is alt mute. Then we would write D sharp -1 underneath. And now this would be muted. Now next, let's turn off octave drop. Let's put everything an octave higher again so they match. And now we want to have a thumb slap at B-2. So let's put the key switch at B-2. And now this will be played with just thumb slaps. If we go to A-2, we can play it in finger pluck open style. And if we remove the key switch, it will just be alternative picking again. Now you'll also notice you can change how this is played with just velocity. You can trigger mutes by putting the velocity low. So rather than having this riff, let's take these lowest notes and make it 33 velocity, then this should be muted. Quickly show you what this would sound like in some of the different presets. So this was the clean DI. Let's try Sanguine glass next. Let's try noisy mid forward. And you get the gist. Depending on which preset you load, you're gonna have a very different sound. I'm gonna go back in Sanguine glass because now I want to show you the actual bass performance right here. Now, of course, it's very thick because it's a Sanguine glass preset. We can also just turn on clean DI. And for this actual mix, we had the Core Studio preset going on, just for your information. Of course, this is the most, I would say, modern, edgy sounding preset available. It was made by Core Studio and they always do incredible work. And so, of course, a bass by itself usually sounds a little odd, but then in the context of the mix, that is where every bass shines. As you can tell, I'm incredibly excited and proud to share this new virtual bass with you. Order yours today at solemntones.com.